What's up? This is Tom Froming from TwinsDaily.com, and last night I had the pleasure of talking with JD Cameron from Twins Daily as well. And we talked about all sorts of pitching, 2020 decisions, who's staying, who's going on the roster, who should get qualifying offers, what roles should guys be in. There were a couple of rough edges, which I've edited out. So just pretend like this was the whole live stream, this edited version, and it's, smooth as silk, baby. So give it a look. Let me know what you think. If you've got any takes on any of these topics we discussed, let's keep the conversation rolling. Drop me something in the comments and let's talk about it. So thanks for checking this out. If anybody doesn't know JD, he came to Twins Daily during last season, 2018. Really showed a penchant for kind of digging up pitching information and just had a good feel for that. So I kind of just wanted to talk about some topics related to the pitching staff. Obviously, kind of free agencies a little bit in the future, so we're going to focus on guys who are currently in the organization. So I just kind of wanted to start out with, we just learned that Nelson Cruz's option got picked up. That was kind of an obvious move.
Yep.
On the pitching side of things, Martin Perez has that $7.5 million option. Is there any way you see the Twins picking that up?
I don't. Perez was interesting. If you had asked that in May, I would have said it was a no-brainer to pick it up after he developed this cutter and had this incredible dominant May. But he lost his command of that over the second half of the season. Became really, really hittable, obviously. Wound up at the end of the season worth a little under 2 F4, I think. And I think looking at the Twins kind of pitching depth, they have a fair few guys internally who can provide that kind of production for league minimum as opposed to $7.5 million. So I would be shocked if they picked up the Perez option for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think all you have to see is that he was left off the postseason roster. I know the Yankees were a very right-handed lineup, so it made sense to go with a very right-handed pitching staff, but that sort of sent a message to me that the Perez option was definitely not going to get picked up. Kind of crazy to think how desperate this team is for pitching, that they're going to let a guy go. $7.5 million is obviously a lot of money, but it's not really a ton in baseball terms, but Perez just didn't pitch well. And like you said, they've got some guys coming up who showed some things from the system. We're going to talk about those guys in a little bit. But first off, let's talk about the rest of the guys in that rotation who are about to hit free agency. Jake Odorizzi, Michael Pineda, and Kyle Gibson. The easiest way to try to keep those guys around would be extending a qualifying offer. Do you see, would you extend one of those to any of those guys?
Yeah. Again, difficult decisions. I think, Odorizzi did himself a lot of favors in his Game 3 start. I thought he was really, really kept the Twins in the game against the Yankees and did exactly what the Twins wanted, which was he gave them an opportunity to stay in and to win that game. Now, obviously, the offense was lacking, but I think with the makeup of the Twins, they're looking for guys who can keep them in a playoff game. This year was a career year for him. And, again, like projecting forward to next October, the trend that we're seeing increasingly in playoff games is guys getting pulled after going through the lineup twice. And Odorizzi is really averaging just over 5 innings pitched per game anyway. So he's someone that's well suited for the Twins and being effective in a postseason game. I think they're interested in letting him explore the free agent market potentially. I heard Derek Falvey allude to that, but he's also expressed an interest in returning.
So you'd kind of wrapped up some thoughts on Odorizzi. I think it seems like Gibson's a pretty obvious no. Not really worth delving into too much there. But about Michael Pineda on the qualifying offer, is that something you consider?
Definitely consider, man. Pineda is the one that's really difficult for me. I think there's 2 guys on the roster altogether that that are really just kind of murky, and I could go either way on. Pineda is the one on the pitching side, and CJ Cron is the one on the hitting side. I mean, when Pineda got going in the middle of the season, he just was such a consistent force in the Twins' rotation. And the reason their rotation was so strong during the regular season was it was just so consistent. They used the same five guys for about 140 something of their 162 starts. But Pineda just feels murky to me. He has a pretty extensive injury history. The suspension clouds what's next for him. So I'm not sure. He was very effective. There's no reason to think he to replicate that in 2020. And I think some of the developments he's made in his approach are really, really impressive. Like, he has become all about pinpoint control now that he doesn't have the dominant stuff that he used to. So Pineda is someone I'm uncertain about. I definitely think it's imperative that they pursue keeping one of Pineda or Odorizzi in addition to pursuing moves on the free agent market and potentially trade pickups also. What do you think about Pineda?
My main thing is it's just so hard to imagine them rolling, because I think you're right on with Martin Perez. I don't think there's any way that they pick up that option. So if they also don't extend qualifying offers to either of those guys, they're only going to have really Jose Barrios rolling in,
Right.
locked into that rotation. That's hard to believe. I would definitely be interested in both Odorizzi and Pineda coming back. However, the qualifying offer at least last year was $17.9 million.
Yep.
I mean, maybe those guys can match that on a 1-year deal, but on an AAV basis, there's no way, I don't think, that Odorizzi or Pineda are going to go out on the free agent market and get a deal, a multi-year deal that even approaches $18 million a year. Maybe I'm off base. I mean, in my mind, I kind of see them maybe in the same kind of value range as Lance Lynn, who got a 3-year, $30 million deal from Texas last year. Am I underselling those guys?
No, I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because Lynn was coming off like a pretty awful year with the Twins, and had like an incredible level of success in a very hitter friendly park, relying heavily on a cutter this year. And so I do think him and Odorizzi are in a little bit of a different spot. Odorizzi's stock is rising heading into free agency, while Lim was basically as low as he could be. But I don't think your range is wildly off. I think potentially like 345 for Odorizzi is something that might be attainable. But again, the free agent market over the last 2 off seasons has been so stagnant that it's really, really challenging to predict.
Yeah, that's maybe the biggest factor in trying to figure this stuff out is, there's so many teams that are tanking. Teams that have been tanking for years are going to be continuing to tank. So it's crazy, but you're right. You definitely hit the nail there. Both Odorizzi and Pineda are entering free agency at a really great time. So they have that going for them. And, a funny thing, I guess I didn't really realize that. I just kind of noticed looking these guys up. It feels like Odorizzi's been around forever. But he's still only 29, and that's the same. He's only a few months older than Garrett Cole. Now, no, those two guys aren't anywhere near the same stratosphere. I'm not trying to suggest that.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of a factor where, yeah, I don't think teams are going to shy away from extending Odorizzi a 3-year deal. And he may be a popular name in sort of the next group. If you're not willing to go 5 years, 100+ million, that's maybe a guy who could really have a lot of competition. So, yeah, the Twins might want to go over their comfort level just to get him in their pocket right away.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, in terms of other free agent options, it's really Odorizzi and Wheeler that fall into this a similar bucket of value from their 2019 season. So I think both are going to have fairly competitive free agent markets. And I'll be curious to see what the Twins do, whether they let him explore that, knowing that he has a preference of returning to Minnesota, where he's kind of iterated a number of times he feels really comfortable, or whether they take the more conservative approach and extend him a qualifying offer to make sure that they protect value on him a little bit.
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, I'd like to see them extend a qualifying offer to Odorizzi, but not Pineda. I'd like them to see them continue to negotiate with him, but I feel like they might be able to have something work out that makes more sense with Pineda than the qualifying offer.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly think they have a little bit more leverage there, right? He was an arm that they were going to ride in October. Um, Obviously, the suspension was a huge hit, and a hugely damaging to team morale, coming right around the same time that Buxton was shelved for the season. So, I do think Pineda's probably. Position the Twins are positioned with a little bit more leverage over Pineda than they are over Odorizzi.
You almost feel like he owes him a solid.
Right, right.
Wouldn't that be nice? All right, well, man, I just got one more topic I wanted to talk about. And that's something we really saw in the postseason with that suspension and the injuries and everything. Is there were so many rookies this year that came in and pitched pretty well, but at the same time, they didn't really have a role, or they maybe their role is fluid. The five guys I had down that I just kind of wanted to run through were Gratterall, Thorpe, Smeltzer, Dobnak, and this may be just me. I may be the only one on this train still, but I still think Zach Littell's the guy that they should consider moving back into the rotation.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That is a fascinating range of guys. When I'm thinking about these guys today, Gratterall to me is his own bucket. I think thinking back on the last 20 years of Twins starting pitching, who are the high end pitchers that they have developed? Johan Santana, Francisco Liriano, excuse me, and Jose Brios, like a step or two below those guys. Um, they owe it to themselves, in my opinion, to try Gratterall as a starter. He has a unique top 10 MLB arm, and so his ceiling potentially is off the charts, and really would complement Jose Brios at the top of that rotation. Obviously, famous last words given how Fernando Romero has worked out over the last year or so, but I at least think they owe it to themselves to try. I think that the Twins view Littell as a bullpen guy now. I think that obviously he was exceptional in the second half of the season, and he's going straight into kind of like the highest medium leverage role there is to start 2020, and is potentially pitching himself into high leverage as the season goes on. Um, and then those last three guys, Thorpe, Dobnak, and Smeltzer, I think are battling for one or potentially two rotation spots to start the season. I think when we're thinking about upgrades to the pitching staff, we should also see it as this cycle, right, of not just the off season, but also up to and including the trade deadline. I wouldn't be surprised if the Twins signed or traded for one starting piece in the offseason, then another partway through the season. But I think that they'll let Thorpe, Dobnak, and Smeltzer battle it out in spring, and at least one will start at the back end of the rotation where, all three have shown flashes that they can definitely hold their own there, and provide the kind of value that Martin Perez did over the course of the season, and maybe even a little better. Um, but I'm curious about your Littell back in a starting pitching role. Tell me a little bit more about that.
He was just always a guy I was a little higher on than everybody else as a prospect. And a lot of that you saw at the major league level. He's just got really clean mechanics. Everything's really repeatable.
Yep.
Good command. And actually, one of my favorite pitches of his, he ditched. And that's kind of what helped him take off and be a lot more consistent is his curveball.
Yep.
Littell throws a really good curveball, but it's just that nowadays that kind of launch angle swing, everybody trying to hit the ball in the air. If you're not hitting your spots with that curveball, it's basically
Right.
dropping right into that bat path that a lot of guys are going for. So the Twins had him scrap that pitch that I really think is a good pitch if he can figure out just how to use it in the right counts, catch guys off guard, make sure he's hitting his spots. obviously ditching that was a huge success
Yep.
and resulted in him really finding himself in the bullpen. But I am interested in seeing, okay, you've taken it here. He wasn't a failed starter in AAA by any means. I'm interested to see if he can take those lessons that he learned in the bullpen, scale it back, and let's send him back to AAA and have him start and just see what happens. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't go well, hey, you've got the bullpen thing to fall back on. They should have Rogers and May and Duffy back next year, so it's not like I would hope they're also adding on to the bullpen. We haven't really touched on that, but that's kind of a discussion for another day. But I'd love to see them just sort of keep that door open for him.
Yep. That would be fascinating. I mean, something that I recall Falvey and Levine making mention of when they first started was creating a player development plan for each of their guys from the lowest level of the minors all the way through the majors. I'm super curious to see how that would work for someone whose role has been as fluid as Littell's has. And he certainly had solid results in the upper minors as a starter. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds in spring. And you're absolutely right about the bullpen. Like it's kind of ironic that the thing that Twins fans were clamoring for in the offseason, heading into free agency last winter, and again as the trade deadline approach was beefing up the bullpen, and that's something that became one of their greatest strengths down the stretch, with the exception of the series that shall not be named that just passed. But
it didn't happen. It didn't
yep,
happen, man.
What series?
Yeah, the
but
Twins won the division, and then it just was over. There were no postseason games.
Right, 100%. No World Series this year. It's done. But I'll be curious to see what they do in the bullpen there because you're right, there are decisions to be made. Like unbelievably, Trevor May is a free agent after 2020. I'm curious to see if they start to lock down some of these guys that have really developed success because they don't want a repeat of like the Nick Anderson and Ryan Presley big fish that got away coming back to haunt them after next season.
Yeah, and I just want to circle back to a couple of the things you mentioned. First off, just between Brusdar Graterol, I look at still as a prospect, and I think that a guy like that, you owe it to yourself as an organization to keep trying to make sure you are putting him in a position to get the absolute most value out of him. I think it's a no-brainer that he goes back in the rotation, back in the minor leagues.
Yep.
Thorpe, Smeltzer, and Dobnak, however. I think all those guys might still have their prospect status. I haven't looked, but regardless, they're kind of now depth. They're not really in that prospect tier. They're in a depth tier where they're kind of next man up or fifth man in the rotation or long man in the bullpen. Which that those three guys being in that position is about as good as the Twins have had in a really long time in terms of pitching.
Yep.
And then the last thing. This is going to be a really hard message for Twins fans to hear, but I'm glad you put that out there that, the biggest addition to the pitching staff may not come this winter. And that would just drive people insane if that's the way it went down. But, people talk about this incredible rotation that Houston's built. Not a single one of those top three guys was acquired off season. They were all acquired mid-season.
Right.
I know they've extended Verlander now. And that was, I don't think that was in season, but, they waited until kind of they knew that they were going to be a World Series contending team. And then beyond that, they waited till the mid-season of those years to make those moves. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Twins did that, but people are going to lose their minds if that's the way it works out.
100%. It would not surprise me at all if the Twins had some combination of Barrios, one of Odorizzi and Pineda, maybe one free agent pickup, say like a Zach Wheeler, and then two from the internal pack to start the season. Because again, like the Twins rotation in 2019 was consistent throughout the season in keeping them in games. Everyone went through phases of pitching really effectively and phases of struggle, but not all of those guys were dominant. They had a dominant offense. And so it is going to be frustrating for people, but I would not be shocked at all if it was one pitcher re-signed and one pitcher either signed as a free agent or acquired. And I think if Twins fans are expecting like two like high profile free agent signings and a trade, I think they're going to be disappointed in the winter.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know everybody's going to have high expectations, and that's okay. I don't see a problem with that. This was a 100-win team. They should have some payroll flexibility. They should have prospects to trade. But it doesn't seem like it's in this front office's DNA. It doesn't seem like it's really in the ownership's DNA to really make huge moves. I'm going to kind of take that stance until I'm proven wrong. But they've made a lot of small moves that made a lot of sense. I mean, Michael Pineda, that was a pretty genius signing up until the suspension. It'd be, if we had some kind of a simulator to figure out what would happen if he didn't get suspended, that would be fascinating.
Right.
Jake Odorizzi, I mean, they traded Jermaine Palacios, who was a really good prospect at that time, and he's just completely crumbled.
I think he's pitching now.
Oh, man. Oh.
I think he's slinging 96 at single A or something.
I believe it. That guy's got a cannon. But what an incredible trade that was. That's all I have for now. Do you have anything else?
No, I think we covered it all for now.
We did it. If anybody listening, if you have questions, I should be able to see them pop up if you want to send those. So I'm going to kind of stall for a minute here. Just again, this has been Tom Froming from TwinsDaily.com. Thanks for joining in this experiment. Thank you, JD, for volunteering to be sort of the test subject number one.
Only one interruption.
Yeah, hey, that's pretty good. Yeah, I got to figure out. I got some technical stuff going on my side I got to figure out, but this went better than it probably could have. Just kind of last thing I want to mention, we're going to wrap up here, but head on over to TwinsDaily.com where both JD and I write, and you can see our most recent story actually talks about some of these pitchers. Cooper Carlson wrote 8 Twins who could be on the move for 2020. So again, 2020 vision, we got the off-season handbook's coming out. We got a lot of other good, fun stuff going on, even though the season's over. So keep checking out Twins Daily. Thanks for being a test subject. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to do it again sometime. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.